c'est
Non,
léger.
non, il faut
Tout le monde rentre.
déjà.
Oui. OK. Fait que dans
Il
ce
faut
cas-
s'asseoir. Moi, je vais faire une présentation à tout le monde. Je m'assois.
En fait, quand vous avez fini avec, vous pouvez juste le prendre, le mettre juste là. Puis là,
Le micro.
ouais.
If you write,
Oui,
What would that be?
Yeah.
yeah, okay, yeah, we'll play live. It's fine, no problem. So we do have the open the hall. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Thank you.
Bonjour à vous tous. Welcome to all of you. I would like to greet you to this round table, the pianist, an essential partner. Bienvenue pour cette table ronde, le pianiste, un partenaire essentiel. Depuis plusieurs années, on voit à quel point les pianistes qui se dirigent en accompagnement vocal ou qui veulent se professionnaliser dans la carrière de pianiste collaborateur deviennent hautement recherchés dans le monde de l'art lyrique. Et on voulait vraiment développer toute la reconnaissance du rôle de ce qu'est un pianiste collaborateur. Et nous étions vraiment très inspirés cette année par un nouveau projet qui est apparu en ville, la Résidence UdeM-McGill en piano art vocal. We were really inspired by this project, and we wanted also to, this is something that we truly believe in the competition, and this year this is also why we are giving an award to one of the pianists that is competing alongside their competitor in the Voice 2022 edition in the art song division. We were also really inspired by the vision and the engagement of one of our own sponsors, the Adrianne Foundation. Bien évidemment, nous tenons à remercier dans le cadre de la discussion d'aujourd'hui nos deux partenaires du jour, l'Université de Montréal et l'Université McGill. Enfin, je voudrais vraiment remercier M. Kelly Rice, qui sera le modérateur et l'animateur de cette table ronde aujourd'hui. Thank you very much, Kelly. I'm going to leave you the room.
Thank you very much, Pimari. C'est un grand plaisir d'être ici avec vous cet après-midi pour vraiment la première activité de cette résidence Université de Montréal McGill en piano art vocal. Et nous avons ici cet après-midi aussi les deux leaders académiques des deux universités de cette nouvelle résidence. Le professeur Francis Perron, qui est au centre.
Bonjour.
Et Michael McMahon, qui est juste là avec la barbe là-bas. Together, well, I was going to say, I did the math with you two guys. More than 75 years playing piano for singers. Congratulations, you've survived. Good for you. 75 in total. So as you can also see, we have three members of our fantastic jury. Next to me is Hartmut Höll, who has many stories you could tell about touring with Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau and René Fleming, and of course your work with mezzo-soprano Mitsuko Shirai. Welcome. Et j'accueille aussi deux autres membres du jury. D'abord, la soprano canadienne Adrianne Pieczonka. And Adrianne Pieczonka recently performed Schubert's Winterreise in concert in Vienna and Madrid with pianist Wolfram Rieger. That would have been a wonderful piece to do during COVID, just around COVID time, that piece. Et finalement, Sir Thomas Allen, il a eu pour pianiste partenaire de grands artistes comme Malcolm Martineau and Roger Vignoles. Welcome to you all. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Bon, je veux parler d'abord avec les pianistes. Je vais commencer avec vous, Francis. Vous avez, comme pianistes, vous avez tous joué les sonates, peut-être rêvé une carrière comme soliste avec l'Orchestre symphonique de Montréal, avec les concertos, et du répertoire qui est vaste pour les pianos solos. Mais pourquoi la voix? Pourquoi le monde vocal? Francis?
Ben, je dois dire très honnêtement que même si je suis allé très loin dans mes études de piano solo et les concertos et tout ça, j'ai toujours eu, à partir de l'âge de 15 ans, je dirais, une passion pour la voix. Et pour être très honnête, être seul avec mon piano dans mon studio, c'était vraiment pas la chose que j'aimais faire. Donc, être en compagnie des chanteurs, et je pense que la voix humaine est quand même une chose qui est absolument magique et qui nous porte. Et j'ai tout de suite été attiré par cet art-là. Et aussi, je dirais que les mots et les textes font aussi partie de ma passion. Donc, pour moi, de pouvoir allier poésie, le piano, la voix, pour moi, c'était l'idéal. Donc, très tôt, j'ai décidé que j'en ferais ma spécialité et ma passion. Bien que j'ai fait beaucoup de musique de chambre et encore du solo aussi, je ne pense pas qu'un empêche l'autre, mais il y a une passion qui est là. Et surtout, il y a une volonté je pense que la voix humaine apporte une chose que les autres instruments n'ont pas aussi. Les vibrations, comme je disais aussi, le texte qui nous porte. Et le répertoire, ce répertoire de lead, de mélodies, d'opéra aussi, je veux dire, c'est un répertoire si riche et je trouvais que je trouvais là ma vraie nature, ma vraie passion.
Francis, you mentioned something I wanted to take up with Michael.
Yeah.
You mentioned playing with other instruments, like playing with violin or playing with cello or chamber music. What's the difference, really? Of course, do you work differently when you're a collaborative piano who's working with a violinist, for example? Michael.
I do. I was very lucky because my first piano teacher was also a violinist, and she decided when I was about 12 or 13 that I should start trying to play for violin. And so she'd throw things in front of me and have me sight read them, and I did my best. And at that point, she forgot to tell me that accompanists actually should practice what they do. So I was under the impression that you had to be able to sight read everything. And so I read all the time, and that helped me go there. But I discovered very early that it was just a lot more fun to make music with others. I loved the solo repertoire, and I practiced my Beethoven, and I practiced everything, but it was just good for my soul to be playing music with others. And then I discovered singers. And interestingly enough, my father used to write poetry, and my mother played a little bit of piano. And to me, the combination of words and music are what make things different playing for singers, because it's a whole other level of music making when the words arrive.
Hartmut, how about you? Your journey into the world of working with singers.
Well, I studied solo piano when I was young, but I felt I should play the Chopin etude a bit faster than the others, or a bit louder, and it doesn't make sense. So I was also studying German literature and philosophy in Tübingen a bit. And then I went to my first rehearsal with Mitsuko Shirai because my piano teacher asked me, there is a good singer, would you like to play for her? And I said, well, yes, if you think. And immediately I knew that's what I want to do, because psychology, literature, philosophy, words, the situation you can understand logically, everything came together. And so that's what I'm doing since then. And you asked about playing with instrumentalists or with vocalists. For me, the most important difference is the word. So in the instrumental music, you have to recognize the architecture, the structure, you have to build something. But in lead, you have just to understand the words, and you have to understand the text in the way the composer understood. Because if you take, for example, das Verlassene Mägdlein from Schumann or from Hugo Wolf, it's totally different, but it's the same poem. So you need so many colors, and it's fantastic. One thing I have to say, I was lucky because when I met Mitsuko Shirai, she never felt as a singer, and I'm the collaborative pianist. I think lead is vocal chamber music. So we can talk about collaborative pianists and we can talk about collaborative singers. And then we bring both parts together.
Oh, I can't wait till we go over there.
And I think then it makes sense.
Yeah,
and a duo is... This morning I was working with young people and I said, don't practice for weeks. Because maybe in the next concert you are not together in bar 12, but in the next concert you will not be together in bar 21. Yeah? But you should talk, how do you understand this poem? How do you understand the situation? I said, sometimes after a recital doing a piece, an encore, you will do a piece and before you go on stage you will say, oh, today we perform it with a little tear. And that's enough. The tempo will change, the color will change, the situation is changing, and next time you will perform it without a tear. And it will change again. So you have to find your way together on stage, and it's full of freedom, which is fantastic.
I want to come back to that, but I would also like just to do a little bit of understanding of what we heard, those of us who've been here all week, a bit of understanding about how it works technically for what you three do as pianists working with singers. In the aria part, the pianist reproduces an orchestra, right? And to accompany opera arias, the piano is replacing an orchestra. In the leader, the art song section, which we heard beautifully last night, and we'll hear tomorrow afternoon at 2 for the finals, the pianist is this partner, this chamber music partner. How do you approach those two different roles? Start with Francis.
Well, it's a tough question, but I have to say that, the orchestra feeling is something, and the knowledge of how it moves, and the freedom of an orchestra compared to the freedom that we have, for example, piano and voice together is a little bit different. Though there's a lot of orchestra writing in the piano part of the leader also, So I think everything is very useful so I think opera is useful also for leader, and the same thing for opera, that music is music. So I find this is, I would say the real difference in lead and French songs, for example, Mélodie Française, is the knowledge of the language. And this is so important because this makes the difference. And I remember when I was studying in Vienna, and I discovered German language. I discovered how to play for German language. I mean, and the feeling that I had in my fingers, it was very different from French melody, for example. Because of what? Because the language is totally different. And so the awareness of the language when we play for lead and melody is so important. Because this is how we're going to play, and how we're going to voice, and how we're going to be with the singer, with the words. And I say this is very, very important when you play for singers, leader and French song, art song in general.
Hartmut, how about you? I'll bring you into this chat. Do you feel there's that much difference between what the pianists were doing in aria and the ones in art song during the week?
For me, it's basically a problem of the instrument, because the piano is a terrible instrument.
A terrible instrument?
Yes, because every sound
piano.
starts with an attack.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
A string player, it's totally different. So for me, the most important thing is to play in the sound and not always on top of the sound. And especially if you are working together with fantastic singers, they need this velvet and not the attack. And of course, you can give an orchestra aria a bigger, let's say, stream. But it's very interesting. For example, Gustav Mahler wrote all his big things, Kindertotenlieder, Lied von der Erde, originally for the piano. And I played the Lied von der Erde, and it's very much different to the orchestra version. And if you see the Kindertotenlieder, or Lieder eines fahrenden Gesellen, for example, the orchestra version is much softer. There are many more compromises somehow, because an orchestra is a bigger instrument. As pianist, you can react much faster. So it's very interesting. I don't see a big difference between orchestra but a bigger stream. So, one thing to the German language, because I absolutely understand how you spoke about French, Mélodie Française, or German. The German is a very special language because we have the lifts very often. My example always is tender. In German, it's zart. It's not zart, it's zart. Yeah? So there is a lift on the R. For example, in Meine Rose, Schumann, Lenau, dem holden Frühling, Lenzgeschmeide. The Lenzgeschmeide is Lenzgeschmeide, yeah? But it's Lenzgeschmeide, Schmeide, yeah? So you have to react as a pianist. So if you play a drum repertoire as a pianist or French, you have to act differently. It's different.
Michael, anything to add to that? I mean, your approach to different art song repertoire with different, the way you approach the piano.
Yeah, approaching the piano is one thing, but I think one of the important differences is when you are playing opera, you're coming more from a conductor's mindset. You have to have it organized. There are certain things that an orchestra can't do that a piano can do, and the other way around as well. But even the type of rubato that one would be able to use, depending on which instrument is actually playing it in the orchestra and how many people are together, there isn't the same kind of flexibility that we can do on the piano. But I think more the general rules of music making. I mean, the great composers wrote songs, they wrote operas, and they wrote sonatas and everything. And I think the general rules need to be observed. However, with traditions, the style can change, you know. But I think when playing orchestral music, it always has to come from the point of how would the conductor conduct this? Is the conductor able to bring you into the next thing? And a very advanced singer, no matter what repertoire they're doing, they can show with their voices what they need. But it still has to always be within the context of what is possible.
I think it's time we brought in the vocal side of this table.
We did our intro.
And let's go for some mauve here this afternoon. We'll start with Adrianne Pieczonka. What are you looking for in a piano partner? What do you look for?
Yes, many things, and you want an equal. I mean, I like this idea that Hartmut said. You know, we call them collaborative pianists, and we're the singer. Well, it is a collaboration, so we should be collaborative singers as well. You know, that's only fair. It is a collaboration. It is a give and take. It is intuition plays a great role. Listening plays a great role. And also, you know, it's sort of chemistry. It's like sort of finding perhaps a mate, if you will. The chemistry has to click. And if it doesn't, the collaboration, in my opinion, is less than good. You have to like each other. There can be humor. There can be some controversy as well, but it's got to be simpatico. And then when you find a pianist that you really do love and develop a relationship with you, it grows, it develops, it morphs. It's a give and take. So, you know, all those aspects. It's and they've, you know, all the pianists are dear friends. I mean, it's a friendship. It's a relationship, in my experience.
Mm-hmm. Sir Thomas, how long does it take for you to know whether you could work with a pianist or not? When do you know?
Sadly, years in some cases. And for years you live with the idea, I wasn't good enough, and wait a minute, that person wasn't good enough either. The lack of collaboration, I think, is something that one can really struggle with. But I think there are so many interesting things have already been said in this discussion. I couldn't agree more with what Hartmut just said about as soon as you put that note down on a piano, it's disappearing. And I was at the Steinway Hall in London recently because one of my jobs for the next few weeks, is as Chancellor of Durham University, and we were taking delivery at Durham of 58 Steinway pianos.
That's a great budget.
It's the biggest check you've ever seen in your life.
Exactly.
But the idea was that the students deserve it, and they truly do. But it was interesting. I was talking to Charles Wood there, who was one of the Steinway, what can I call him? He's on the books of Steinway. and talking about the impression you can get of a pianist putting down the chords at the start of a piece, and then by using some kind of body language, you create the impression that it's going forward and growing, rather than it just sitting there and diminishing. And this impression is really extraordinary. And Charles was explaining that day about where to touch the key, to touch it there where it gets at its narrowest, or right there at where you get the biggest pivotal effect. And all of that was really fascinating, I felt. But also Francis said something interesting about when you asked about German music, French song and what have you, and English song, if I may say so as well. I think there's a direct parallel with the art of the period as well, of the various countries involved. If you look at French Impressionism, or you look at German Romanticism, or whatever it might be, and then look at the watercolors of England, somehow it's reflected in the music too, I think. It's the embodiment, it's a way that we represent our particular sensitivities and cultural sensitivities, either through heavy oil colors or delicate little pastels and watercolors over here.
How much do you, as singers, involve your collaborative pianists in discussions? Francis was mentioning about poetry and line. And tell us a bit more about that discussion and how that evolves as you're putting together a program. Maybe, Adrian, you could start out. Or Sir Thomas, please.
No, sorry. Yeah. It's just that it was something on my mind from before. When you watch an instrumental recital, say, a violinist playing sonatas with a pianist on a stage, quite often because of the musicianship or whatever it is of the instrumentalist, and singers would argue with that they are instrumentalists too and musicians, but you'll often find a violinist sharing something through the lid of the piano with the pianist. We don't seem to do that, and I wish we did. I wish that singers would acknowledge the fact that we have collaborated on this, and now let's share this wonderful poem. Ich bin der Welt gekommen, or whatever it might be. I must go down to the seas again, and the pianist is there singing, yes, I'm coming with you, William. So that there is that sharing of a poem going on, because that's what we do. It's not a separate entity with someone showing their skills on the keyboard. It's the poetry.
And then sharing, as Adrian, you were just we're about to start on that, sharing the interpretation of the poem that you're working with. Could you speak a little about how you share that with your pianist?
Well, I think, is my mic still working? Yes, there it is. I like to begin with a lot of discussion about the poetry, and often there can be quite different aspects between me and my accompanist, my pianist, of, no, I see the poem this way. Oh, do you? So it can start that way before you even get into the studio. And the older I get, the more I'm fascinated and want to get in to the poetry. I think as a young singer, I just sang, and you got together, and I don't think I really did that, which is a bit of a shame. I didn't delve in as much, especially if it was in a foreign language. I do speak fluent German, which is great. It's not my mother tongue, which is different, which means that I think maybe for Sir Tom as well, when I sing in English, I'm at my most authentic. It's my language, and it's that immediate, I'm home.
Do you work on it the way you do French, German, Italian?
Sometimes, not all the time, probably less. But why not, right? The poetry of James Joyce, The Barber that we've heard, or yes, it should be delved into too. But I think it takes over, and you just want to get right in and start making music with it. Yes.
One of the things that strikes me too, of course, is that the pianist, you're working with that, right? And it's exterior. It's you're manipulating that instrument there. How much do you help your vocal partner with understanding what's happening with them that day for their instrument? Because of course the voice is in our bodies, right? And how much are you involved with having object to conversation about, oh, you know, the breathing's not so good today. Maybe you drank too much last night, or perhaps you have a cold or something like that. So,
if I want to be re-engaged, I don't address too many of those things, I must say. But no, when I was a young pianist, I used to think I needed to do everything for the singer and help. And, you know, there was a long note I needed to speed up because, you know, do all that sort of stuff. And then I realized, no, they have to do their job and I do my job and we do it together. I can't be responsible for their throat. However, I do need to be sensitive. And you can hear when a singer is singing when maybe the air is not going to last as long as you thought. And so, I mean, but again, it depends on the experience of that singer. And how well you know the singer. Some of the singers I know and that I play for, I know that that note is always going to be exactly the note value. I never have to worry about them. And some other ones, well, they just might move it around a little bit. And so we have to be super flexible. And the only way to be able to do that is for us to know the singer's part cold, inside out. We learn the text, we do all the translations, we learn how to pronounce the words. And we, in our horrible voices, usually horrible voices, some people are blessed, we sing it at home when we play. And so that we get a feeling for where the phrases need to go. And then after that, if you are sympathetic to your partner's, to their music making, you can feel when they need to move. You can feel when they need a little bit more time. It's something that you have to live with that music so that it becomes part of you and then you can share it. It's like, you know, my wife and I went to Argentina a few years ago and we took one tango lesson and I went, this is it. This is music making. There are no words. You don't have to define it. You just sense each other and you move.
I want to just go into another kind of just really physically of what it looks like on stage and what's happening with the piano playing and the singer singing. I've always wondered whether there's a kind of a hierarchy of risk here when you're in performance. Is the singer more at risk from criticism from the audience or whatever than the pianist is? I'm just wondering, and how does that work out in your music making? Hartmut, do you have any comments on that?
Well, I must say, if you are famous and you have a special standard in what you are doing, you have to bring this every night. And that's hard sometimes. I mean, Fischer-Dieskau, for example, he was never weak on stage. But I remember a London recital, we met before the concert, and he said, I'm really tired today. Please, we start with Hafner, wer sich der Einsamkeit ergibt. Please start softly. And I felt he really didn't feel good. And I started, and it was never better. Yeah? In this condition. Or, for example, he always knew my body condition today is, in a way, I can't do this. Then he did not show this on stage. For example, I remember a very funny story. We practiced a program, and there was a crescendo to forte, and I said, no piano. They said, it's written forte, but no piano. Okay. I played piano. Fine. 1 year later, we did the same program. I remembered, and I played piano. Why are you playing piano? It's written forte. Yeah? The condition was different. And the most funny thing was on my first tour with him in '82, the program ended with Krämerspiegel, 4 or 5 songs, difficult songs. And there's that song, Die Händler und die Macher sind des Helden Widersacher. And the Helden is a very high note, fortissimo. And we played dum, da-dim, da-dim, des Widersacher. But there was no sound, nothing, just Widersacher. And I felt like shot. And two songs later we went backstage and I said, Dieter, what happened? What did I? oh, this shit word, I forgot, I didn't know. So what he did, normally somebody would say, sind es wieder Sachen, but he showed a silent fortissimo, and I'm absolutely sure that everybody in the hall got this fortissimo, and there was no problem. That's why I say he was never weak. He always went forward.
They didn't say he played too loud?
No.
Look, when I was 19 years old, my first year at university, Carlo Bergonzi was doing his farewell, one of his many farewell tours in North America, and I was turning pages, and I think it was Dalton Baldwin who was playing for him. So I remember the first piece was Amarilla Mia Bella, you know those songs. And I remember I was my first time turning pages at a major recital. I go out, and he's completely lost. I don't know what to do to turn pages, and I'm just wondering how many times have pianists saved you, Adrianne, in recital?
Oh, yes, definitely more than once. But one thing that I love, not only it's happened to me in performance, but when I go and see a leader, an art song recital, that if there is a problem, if a singer has a moment where they forget the text and the pianist has to sort of, repeat it, or they stop, it's always wonderful. It's like, yes, something, and I find it actually, it's human, and people in the audience love to see something human happening, of an error, of a mental break. We think that we have to be perfect, and it's a very hard standard. As Hartmut said, we come out and we try to be as perfect as possible, and we get let down at times, whether we have an entry that's wrong or we forget a word. If you're doing Winterreise, it's a lot of words, a lot of songs, and in those moments where it's let's start again, or there's a moment of levity and there's a laugh, the best. It's really special, and
you get laughs in Winterreise?
I don't think it's happened in Winterreise, but if it's a mixed program, especially if it's an encore, often these things can happen in an encore, and it could be a moment of fun. And then we all kind of just, we all melt and say, oh, these are two human beings making music together. Isn't this wonderful? So that's my experience. When something goes wrong, it actually can be quite wonderful. Yeah.
Any stories to share with us on that front, Sir Thomas?
Well, let me think. I remember a recital that Lucia Pop was giving with Geoffrey Parsons in London some years ago. And of course, she was absolute mistress of the appearance and, the calm and what have you. And there were Czech songs. So she was entirely at home, but she got somewhere in the middle of these Dvorak or Smetana, whatever they were, and Geoffrey was there, and she got completely lost. And looking at Geoffrey, I suspected that she was lost, and looking at Geoffrey, not a thing changed. He played through to the end as though nothing was going on. But the worst, I acknowledged early in my career that I was very much a frail and fragile human being, and if I made a mistake, there was no covering it up. I just had no qualms about saying, I'm sorry, I've stopped. I've made a mistake, let's do it again. But the worst experience of that was a song that I, can sing in my sleep, Sea Fever, which we may well hear later this afternoon. The simplicity of stopping a pianist is fine and saying, let's do it again. Three verses, we'll start again. I got onto the second verse too early. When you're doing it with the band of the Royal Marines, conducted by a lieutenant colonel, and all these men in uniform behind you, to get halfway through the first verse and then think, I'm not going to be able to get out of this. And there are 150 men all blowing trumpets and bugles and things behind. Somehow I've got to stop this. It had to be stopped, but it was a military campaign to do so. It was, because Lieutenant Colonel, would you mind? I'm terribly sorry. Let's go back to the beginning. Duck up. So we started again and got through the second time around. But it was, I'm retired now, so I'll never have to go there again.
Look, one of the things that tested my marriage and tests anybody's relationship is travel. And, we still do travel together, don't we, pianists and singers? And I don't know who to start with this one, but Tell us a bit about some of the experiences you've had on the road with a singer, Michael, if you have anything you'd like to, about touring with singing and the challenges of that.
Touring. Well, I mean, touring is always difficult. Just one example, I was doing a concert a few years ago where a singer came from England to rehearse. He arrived late at night. We did a rehearsal at 9 o'clock in the morning for an hour or whatever, and then we went straight to the airport expecting to get to our venue. And delays. And we ended up not being able to fly until the morning of the concert. And so we had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning in order to be able to get to the airport. We arrived, it was in Oberlin, Ohio, and we had an hour in the hall, and then we did the concert. But we had never done a recital together before.
Yeah.
It was a scary moment, but it was great fun because he was a wonderful singer and just, we did it.
Hartmut, did you look forward to touring? Did you enjoy those experiences, or were they more challenging?
It's normal business. The only problem is you are for a concert in Athens or in New York in a hotel beside the museum, but you have no time to go in.
Yeah.
So you hope after retiring I come back and go to the museum.
Yeah.
Adrianne, how about you? Traveling with your pianist date,
Right.
mate.
I've done, I've traveled a lot, mostly with the long opera engagements of months at a time. And of course, when you're doing a recital tour, it can be long, but it can be more travel because you've got New York or then you've got Washington. But I've not really done that kind of, my career is much more operatic than recital, but I have traveled, and as Hartmut said, it's very lonely. It can be very, you want to sing well, and again, this idea of perfectionism, so I better not do too much. You want to eat well, sleep well. You're in a strange city, you're trying to focus, and also then you're missing home. It's a very difficult lifestyle. It's, and I don't want to, boo-hoo. It's what we do, as you say, it is business. We do it because it's what we've chosen to do. And we do it to the best of our ability. It can be very lonely. I've suffered from periods of great, loneliness, and that can be fueled into the art too. But I think, yes, I'm also looking forward to that I'm traveling much less, and the pandemic made that happen. And I think a lot of us found a beauty in being home. I've never, it was just like, oh, this is what it's like to be home more, to work in the garden, to be with my family. So it was interesting.
And Sir Thomas, is there something special, though, about touring with one pianist and just going together for 10 cities or places with the same program?
Yes, I think there is, very much so. Take the case of Winterreise. I was invited to revisit it. I don't know, I forgot, maybe 10 years ago, something like that. And I wasn't sure because it's 75 minutes and the legs they get tired, the back of the knees in particular, standing there for 75 minutes and 24 songs. But I sat with it for a long time, decided I would do it, and embarked on a tour. And it was wonderful because it's, what will happen here? Is it going to be soft today? Is it going to be loud? What will the attitude to that line be? How do you see that line of poetry? Is it changing today? Is there a different vision? All of these things happen, and you can accommodate all that when you've got a dozen destinations lined up. The problem lies sometimes when you're not traveling together, of course, and you're coming in from somewhere on one aeroplane, and your accomplice is coming in from somewhere else, like the Far East. I remember on one occasion, and I was in Brussels, and I was working with Roger Vignoles, and I got a telephone call mid-afternoon saying, "Tom," I said, "Yes." "It's Roger. I'm in Marseille at the moment." And I'll try to get you in time in Brussels. What do you want me to do about it, Roger? And my luggage isn't here either. So fortunately, we were working in the Monet. So we went to the wardrobe and found a long tailcoat that would fit Roger Vignoles and long trousers too. He did arrive in time, just, and we went through with it. But it's a weird life, as Adrianne said. And looking at it from this end of the tunnel, I don't think I want to revisit it particularly. But I was much younger and the times were different. And oh God, where does one get the energy from? It's frightening.
I'd like to just pass to kind of return where we started, Francis, cet après-midi. La résidence de l'Université de Montréal et McGill en piano vocal. Vous allez attribuer un prix pour un chanteur.
C'est-à-dire c'est une invitation
oui.
à un chanteur pour venir faire un récital avec nos pianistes, les pianistes de la résidence.
Pour les 6 pianistes qui
oui.
vont être étudiants
oui.
ici à Montréal pour les 2 universités pour l'année prochaine. Quels sont vos critères pour le choix du chanteur ou chanteuse?
En fait, c'est, je dirais, assez simple. Je pense que la voix, la qualité de la voix, c'est quand même un grand critère. La présence, bien sûr, sur scène. La façon dont le chanteur délivre le texte aussi. Et la capacité de chanter dans plusieurs styles. Ça, je pense que plusieurs répertoires, plusieurs langues, je pense que c'est vraiment nos critères.
Polyvalence. And as jury members for the competition, you're going to be choosing the $5,000 John Newmark Prize given by the Fondation Famille Lupien. And I'm just wondering what you've been thinking about as you've been listening to the pianist Hartmut. What will your thoughts be as you're choosing some of the wonderful pianists we've heard this past week?
I'm looking not for a accompanist. I think the singer brings the words, so it's a bit more forward, but the pianist has to create the whole atmosphere, the right emotion, because both understood the text. And to create atmosphere means, for example, not playing the piano, to build sounds, and to make chamber music together.
How about?
Well, it's kind of like Goldilocks. It's like, you know, the bed or the is it the bed or the chair of the father was too hard, the one of the mother was too soft, and the one that was just right. And for the pianist, you don't want a little grey mouse. You don't want someone who's not having a presence. You also don't want the pianistic presence to overwhelm the singer. You want it just right, and you want that quality of listening and recalibrating all the time. It's a dance, and there are moments, whether it's in an interlude or a prelude, postlude, where it's then the piano takes over, and then times where the voice has to be the focus and the language, as you say. So it is this. So which duo or which pianist is sensitive to that? Is listening. And we've seen some wonderful performances. Will be difficult to choose, I must say.
Sir Thomas, anything to add to?
Yeah, I think it will be difficult because we have had some outstanding playing. We've had some very hefty playing as well. I think the understanding of what it is to be a collaborator in these things could be better understood at times. But I mean, that's the wonderful discovery that young people like this have to make together. If they stay together, and of course they may decide to go separate ways or whatever it might be, but discovering the joys and the beauty of the poetry, the literature that is their meat and drink on a daily basis is the great discovery for them. And finding that and the kind of forensic work that goes into doing that, I think, is what keeps it all together. And that's the exciting part.
Thank you all very much. I think we have some time actually for maybe about 5 minutes. Are there any questions? Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Ici, je crois qu'il y a un microphone quelque part, je ne vois pas. Est-ce qu'on a des questions? It's your time to ask any of these people anything, but try to keep it to piano collaboration if you can. Oui, madame, oui.
Well, I'm always studying language myself, and I have been for years, and I study the diction of the language and the International Phonetic Alphabet and the rules of the language and all these different things. So our pianists will have to study English, French, German, and Italian diction, and we will encourage the language study as well, because it's absolutely important for them, especially since we're hoping to train not only collaborators, but coaches who are able to share this knowledge with the rest of the community once, as they grow as coaches themselves. That is almost the primary purpose of this program, in order for these 6 people to take all this knowledge and to share it, and that we can give a gift to these 6 pianists to help them polish their skills. Because the job that we do, you can't read it in a book. It's a practical job. You learn from listening. I mean, Francis and I and Hartmut, I'm sure everybody has played for 1 million lessons, not just from one teacher, but from many, many, many teachers. And we go to master classes and we listen, we learn from who's ever giving the master class, and then we collect all this information and then we charge people for it. I'm kidding, but no, there's a huge amount of knowledge that needs to be acquired. And you have to begin somewhere, so this is a good place to start. I'm still learning. I've been playing piano. I've been playing for singers for 50 years. There's still things I'm dying to learn about.
And languages too, even if you just take it from that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Francis, il y a quelque chose à ajouter à ça?
Oui, seulement dire que vraiment le plaisir qu'on va avoir à justement travailler avec ces pianistes-là, c'est justement d'essayer de leur donner les outils qui sont pour nous nécessaires à la poursuite de ce métier-là. Et je pense que si j'avais eu la chance d'avoir une résidence comme ça à 20 ans ou à 25 ans, c'est quand même incroyable. Donc, je pense qu'on va leur donner quelque chose de complet, j'ose espérer.
Well, I think that's all the time we have. C'est tout ce qu'on a comme temps planifié pour cette table ronde. Sir Thomas Allen, Adrianne, and Hartmut, thank you so much for being here in Montreal for this competition and taking the time to be part of this table ronde. Michael McMahon et Francis Perron, bonne chance avec la nouvelle résidence. Yes. Vraiment une bonne nouvelle pour la ville de Montréal. Et merci de votre présence, cher public. Prenons une petite pause et dans quelques minutes, nous serons de retour avec Sir Thomas Allen en masterclass. Merci beaucoup d'être là. Thank you.